Can.
All right. So welcome to the pre-conference webinar for the DOPA 2020. It's all about cultivating an innovative mindset by Sanjiv Chourasia. We are glad that the conference is being sponsored by Quality Kiosk, P Clouded, and we got basically our knowledge partners and other sponsors like Value Innova, IOTA, Brewsing, Valuable Consulting, and Opal Creative Minds. I would like to welcome Sanjiv Chourasia. Sanjeev is a dear friend. He worked with me long back in L&T Infotech. He is now heading the Agile Center of Excellence for Technology Solutions Group in TD Bank, which is one of the North America's fifth largest banks. With over 2 decades of international experience working for large institutions, including one on Wall Street, New York, and mentoring small and nimble startups, he has gained a range of experience that he loves to share with the IT community and with entrepreneurs. He's also the co-founder and chief mentor of Public Incubator Incorporation Canada, a global business incubation platform for emerging entrepreneurs. And I think these words are not enough to introduce Sanjeev. He's a real gentle person and a gem of a person who loves sharing his knowledge and his learnings with everybody. And that is very important, and that is really something amazing for all of us. With that, Sanjeev, I would unshare my screen, and I would like to call upon you to basically take away the session and share your learnings on this very interesting topic. Thank you so much, Sanjeev, for being with us.
Thank you, Adi, for such a kind word. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Sanjeev, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the kind words. Definitely thank you for inviting me. I'm so glad to be part of this. I wish I was in India and could participate much more actively. But given the situation, looks like this is the new normal, and we are living a new normal now. So also, I'd like to thank all the sponsoring partners who is making DOPA 2020 such a success. I think they are critical to the success of building this community as a whole worldwide. So I'm once again, thank you for having me. Let's dive in. I think first of all, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. For me, it is morning. It's 9:30ish. So I'll get started. The sun is shining, so I'm happy about that. It's not very common here in Canada to see sun very often, so I'm always grateful when I see the sun. So just a top up on what Adi already talked about myself. I definitely come from India. I moved out from India in 2004, and then I work for various organizations, including large telecom, banking. Primarily, my experience has been kind of a range from large corporations. Also, I had a couple of startups, and right now I am I would say, mentoring startups through my public incubator platform. I got my MBA in technology and innovation, so it's kind of this topic resonates pretty well with, also the degree I got, once I came to Toronto. I work with TD Bank, as Adi mentioned, I'm heading the Center of Excellence for our infrastructure group that manages all of bank's infrastructure. I work on the Wall Street, so that's what I'd like to say is, the range of experience that kind of gathered from working with large corporations to a smaller organization, it helps in, seeing things through, that what we can apply from one and to the other, because that is much more significant than just learning one set of things. So today we are going to talk about, why this matters. So, all of you are here, why an innovative mindset is important, and it is much more important in today's world than it was yesterday. As we all know, things keep changing with a super fast rate. Now, how do we keep up with that? There's tremendous things going all over and around us. It is not only going to disrupt the industry, but it is going to disrupt all of us, right? At an individual level as well. So how we can stay, much ahead of the game and stay ourselves mentally prepared for all these. So we'll talk about, in particular, why it matters to you, and then we'll talk about what innovation is. There's thousands of definitions floating around what innovation is. So we'll talk a little bit more about, putting more like a structure around what innovation is. And then we'll see how do we cultivate that kind of a mindset so that we all become innovative, right? Because recall when we were like a toddler, or when we were a child, our imagination would go all over, and over a period of time with so much of priming and education, and everything is trying to keep ourselves in a box. And once we do that, that mindset, we tend to start losing that. And over a period of time, people like us and some of the folks on the call, we tend to lose that characteristic. So how we can bring that back in the current context. And then if we have time, we'll open it up for any question and answer. So that's how it's going to flow. So Henry Ford has a very, I really love this quote, because this is kind of counterintuitive. You might have heard that people, as an organization, we should go to our customer and ask for what they need. It's not that it is not important, but many times that doesn't lead to any innovation. Imagine if Steve Jobs went to their prospect customers and asked what an iPhone should look like. Can you imagine that anybody could tell them? So Henry Ford says, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. Because at that time, horse was supposed to be one of the fastest means of transportation. So when we ask anybody in general, what do you want next? The only thing that would come to our mind, which is quite natural, there's nothing wrong here, which is quite natural, just because of the fact that we build on something that we already know. We don't, imagine and in fascination, unless we cultivate the mind of Elon Musk, who's dreaming of, putting an entire community on Mars, right? So which regular people won't think that far. So how do we cultivate that kind of mindset so that we become relevant in our organization, in our society, and in our life? So why you should be doing it? I think we all know, that today innovation is the only, if I have to put my finger on, there are 1,000 things happening, and the rate of change that we are seeing in today's world, nobody has seen that in the past, right? This kind of change that we have seen in the last 10 years, you can't even compare with the last 1,000 years, leave alone 100. I would say even go back 1,000 years, we haven't seen that kind of change. And why is it happening? And how is it? Because there is so many infrastructure and technology that has become a commodity, right? For example, everybody, even if you take India or any other country, right, everybody has access to high-speed internet. That opens up the door for thousands of different business models. And because I mentor some startups, and they're always thinking about, hey, I got all this for free. How can I develop something with very minimal capital cost and move and launch in the market with almost like no cost to them, right? So it is fantastic. And what it does, it kind of triggers huge amount of innovation all over, not only in small companies, but even in large organizations. So, and why it matters for you? Because I think most of the folks on this call, either you are part of a business analyst community or in testing community, and I believe that you are that golden link, I would say, the golden link between business and technology, right? Because you are the one who could possibly speak both the language much more fluently than a technology person is speaking business language or a business person speaking technology language. So you are acting as that golden link. And so when you are in that powerful position, what happens is you have, enough, I'd say, juice and power to bridge that gap and see that spark of innovation, which often gets dismissed by either of them. Because let's say I'm on the business side and I come up with an idea of, hey, can I implement this? But then I might be constrained just because I don't know enough about technology. So I might think that, what, it may not get implemented by technology, or technology takes too long, or there's thousands of other constraints that will act as a filter when I'm trying to think of an idea when I'm on the business side. And the same happens on the technology side. So I believe, some of you have been also coding and developing things. When you're doing some of those, I I can pretty much bet that many of you might have thought of, hey, why not business do this? I could easily code that, and it will have much higher value, because many times we are not just a programmer or a QA, or we are also users of the system, many of those systems that we test, right? So we know what can be done on top of what already exists. So what the point I'm trying to make is, regardless of where you are always a golden link, between various other communities, right? Even if you're not in QA, so let's say tomorrow you want to get into a completely different field of job or study or whatever it might be, you are a part of a chain, and you are and assume that you are that golden link. So once you have that kind of a mindset, you will do phenomenal, because now you're able to connect all the dots which are all over the map, and make a nice chain which together is much more stronger than individual link. So so let's find out what is innovation. I would love to have this of more of a conversational style, but given how we are doing here in the webinar, it might be a little difficult. So there are so many definitions floating around innovation. There might be a small change in something that you already do. There is an increment in products, say from iPhone 9 and 8 to 10. So there's changes happening. That is also innovation. And there are kind of disruptive innovations, and there are innovations which is kind of completely wiping out some companies, an existing incumbent. So there are variety of them. So what while studying all this, I tried to put the definition of innovation in a very condensed fashion. And here is my definition. So innovation is a novel idea that creates exponential value. So here, both the keywords, novel and exponential, are important. So what is novel idea? So novel idea could be either in terms of product, it could be in terms of services, or it also could be in terms of processes. Many of you might also be engaged in some of the process development thing of the in your organization. And so you can implement some of those novel ideas there as well to make the process much more efficient. And then services, there's tons of services industry, and we all somehow are either consuming it or we are contributing to that industry. And even in that area, we can have a lot of novel ideas. Product, we are very much familiar with. We have seen tons of gadgets all over and all around us, and we see that always coming up with new products in the market. Pretty much, not even 1 year, within 6 months, you'll see new products. Now, how do we create exponential value? So exponential value can be created either in terms of convenience. So convenience is something, if we have to consciously think about that, we don't take convenience as our number one. But if you look at the study, if you look at how we choose things, convenience comes first in general. We generally go and reach out to even a junk food to eat just because it is convenient. It's lying around, right? And to create a healthy dish, it takes time. So although we know that one is good, one is not so good, but then convenience trumps lots of other stuff. So that is one important element when it comes to creating a exponential value. Uh, Customer delight is about something that customer never expected on day one, or they don't expect that you provide that service, but once you go a little bit, just a bit above and beyond that what you expect, then imagine, let's say all of you have a mortgage or a home loan, and your bank calls in and says, you know what, your loan is at, I'm just making it up here, sorry, I don't know all the percentages there. So let's say it's at 12%. And you know what, for the COVID, I'm going to reduce that by 2 percentage points. So it is going to be 10% for next 2 years, and you don't have to pay back nothing like that. Well, you're delighted because you never expected your bank to come to you upfront and just calling you and saying, hey, this is, I understand the situation and I want to help you out. So that is one way of it. Other ways, and it could also be in terms of products, services, all the three things that we talked about, product, services, or process. So it can come in all three forms. Even if you think of processes, many of you might have been working in large organization. We all know that the process there is, not all the gears have, nicely oiled, right? So there are so much of waiting, and there are some wastes that, is generated in this process. And if you just add a little bit, of an innovation there, you can just the overall, you are able to achieve much faster than what you could have done before. So there's an opportunity just about anywhere in all those three areas. Growth is pretty common. A company is at a certain stage, they want to go to the next level, they invest and they make their product and services better. Efficiency, again, it ties back to the process that I just talked about. And last but not the least is trust. So if we are, and as we all know, trust is one of the most important factor when it comes to maintaining a customer for a longer time. Uh, Getting the customer for the first time is many cases is easy. You can apply lots of marketing tricks and gimmicks to get the customer, but to retain, you need to have trust. And then to create that trust, again, you can innovate and think of different ways how you can enhance the trust from where you are at this point in time. So these are kind of exponential values, or the areas in which we can create this exponential value through innovation. There are a couple of strategies. I'll just touch upon that briefly, just so that we know. Many of you might be familiar with these. One is called the red ocean strategy, which is a very common that you see one competing against the other, one telecom competing against the other telecom, one bank competing against the other bank. So that is called red ocean because there's a fierce competition happening among these organizations, and because of that, there is blood in a sense. So that's the reason it's called red ocean, because there is blood. But then there are areas where nobody has gone in before. There are areas where it's kind of an uncharted territory. You can go in and establish a new idea or a business where nobody there's no competitor. Basically, what you're trying to do is you're making competition irrelevant. So that is called the blue ocean strategy, because the blue ocean, is open kind of sky underneath the open sky, so you can just do anything that you'd like. So these are, there are books on this, but these are at the very, very high level. These are the two different strategies which are applied by organizations. One thing this is a nice story. If you get a chance, you can YouTube it and listen to Professor Clayton Christensen. He is from Harvard Business School. Unfortunately, he died, I think it was in December or in January. And he has this concept around innovation. He is considered, like I would say, the father of innovation. And he talked about something called jobs to be done. So rather than focusing on a product, you focus on what job this product is going to do, right? Or what job, or what is the problem that is coming in my life that I'm trying to solve. For example, my son and my daughter, both of them are graduate. Their graduation ceremony is not happening because of COVID. And yesterday we were just brainstorming that what can we do, so that they don't feel that their graduation is not even celebrated. And we are thinking, shall we, get some food from the restaurants? Shall we, go to the park and do a little, camping there? So we're thinking of various ideas. And then even for food, what food, well, this is, my son, he loves to eat just pizza. So can we just get pizza? So we were not thinking first that, hey, shall we go and get pizza? Because that is a product. That is not the job we are trying to do. The job that was supposed to be done in this situation was, how do we celebrate, our sons and daughters' graduation? And then there are lots of other things that will participate to get this job done. And pizza could be just one of them, right? So in this case, it's not that a pizza company A is competing with pizza company B for my money. It is that pizza might be competing with something completely different. Maybe I'm just going to a park and having an ice cream, right? So it could be completely different. It may not be even in the same industry. So Clayton Christensen puts it in a very nice way that focus on the job to be done. And he also has a very nice story around, the milkshake that McDonald's, they sell. And I'll try to, let me just quickly see what the time is and if I will be able to cover this. Let me try to be very, very brief around this, maybe a minute. So the story goes like this. McDonald's is definitely a very, very sophisticated company. They have tons and tons of data around their customers, and they know exactly, what kind of customer come in and buy their milkshake. And they were trying to improve this product so that their milkshake business will go higher, that their sales numbers will go much, much higher. And they have been improving this product, bringing in focus group, bringing in, they created personas that, hey, these are the types of people who typically buy milkshake, and they have been interviewing them. But the sales were going nowhere. It was just very incremental. They're not seeing any substantial difference. So they hired, that's what this professor claims, that they hired his team to figure it out. They came in and they were focusing on jobs to be done rather than their milkshake itself. And they came in and interviewed people, which was not very easy, to figure out why they're buying their milkshake. And what they figured out that these people who were primarily buying the milkshakes, they came very early in the morning. So this is the study in the US market. Okay, so they came very early in the morning, they grabbed the milkshake and they just drove, right? So, and that was most of the people who were doing. So they were very curious why they're doing so. And they're trying to figure out the reason for that. And eventually what they found out was these people were mostly driving to work, so they came out from the home and they were driving for work, and their drive was pretty long, right? An hour, 45 minutes or so. And they wanted something to hold in their hand and to pass their time while they're driving, right? And then this milkshake was doing the job very well because it was so viscous. It's really hard to even, suck it up. So it takes like half an hour to suck this little damn thing. So, and that was the reason, these people were hiring this milkshake to get the job done. They could have, just eaten bananas or, Snicker bars or anything else, but then it would, but that was not, solving their problem in a sense. That was not getting the job done what they're looking for. So this is a fantastic example. And after that, what they did was they focused on how do they make it more viscous. Don't care about making it nutritious because people even didn't care about nutrition. And how do you make it more viscous? Maybe make the straw a little bit more thinner so it makes it a little more harder to pull, so it stays much longer, because that was the intent for most of the folks who were buying it. So this is and they did that, and their kind of the claims that their sales went 4 times. So so this is a fantastic example of how, focusing on getting the job done is more important than focusing on just a specific product. All right, so now we'll talk about the types of innovation. If you recall in the beginning, we said we'll talk about the what part of it. So, and the way we'll do this, if you have a moment, just grab a pen and a paper. I wanted to have this more interactive. Or mentally you think of an answer. So this is going to be more in a quiz format. So I'm going to ask a question. So a question will appear here. And then you have to figure out what type of innovation is this. So before we get into that, I would like to define, 4 different types of innovation, that you will see all around you. Now, the reason we are going through this is to help you conceptualize that, hey, when I'm thinking of something, of an idea, where do they really fall into, right? So that is one way to think. And secondly, depending on where you are or in what organization you are or what stage of your product development you are or where in the business you are, you can think of which innovation I should apply. So it goes both ways, right? You might be wanting to invest something in research than just to sustain. So let's understand this. What are these 4 types of innovation? So at the on the left hand side that you see, which calls out around problem defined. So there could be 2 options here. One is the problem is not well defined, okay, or the problem can be well defined, which means we exactly know what problem we are trying to solve, okay. So that is one side of the quadrant. At the bottom, what you see is it's called domain defined. So when you think of domain, think of the knowledge, the skills which are required to solve that problem. So even in some cases, the domains are crystal clear that this is the technology we're going to use. So that's what you see on the right-hand side, which says well-defined domain, and on the left-hand side, it says not so well-defined domain. So this is a quadrant. Now within that quadrant, you see 4 boxes, right? So let's take one at a time. Let's take when the problem is very well defined and the domain is also very well defined. So in this case, we know exactly what problem we are trying to solve, and also we know what is the technology, what is the skill set, what are the resources that we need to solve that problem, and that is called sustaining innovation. All right, so sustaining innovation is something, for instance, we have the previous version of, I'll just take a simple an example that everyone is familiar with, an iPhone or even your Samsung phone or anything that you have S or whatever the version is running now, maybe S8 to S9 to S10, S11, right? So what Samsung is doing is trying to innovate their product just to sustain their business. Right? If they don't innovate, somebody else will do and they will lose their business. So that is called sustaining innovation. So sustaining innovation is pretty incremental, wherein you know exactly what problem, you know that you have to come with the next version of the phone, and you know that these are, the technologies, these are the features that I got to develop in that phone, right? So it is very well defined in both aspects, from problem standpoint and from domain standpoint. So next we'll shift a little bit. So if the problem is well defined, all right, but the domain is not so well defined, and that is called breakthrough innovation, which means problem, in this case we know that this is what we want to solve. We'll see an example. So that's the reason, I put this in the format of a quiz, so that you can see how to clearly differentiate these. Okay, so that will be more like an example. But the domain is not very well defined in this case. What it means is, we don't know exactly what kind of skill set is necessary, what kind of technology is necessary to solve this problem. But there's a problem, right? So maybe you want to go to, Saturn or Uranus, not even Mars, right? Maybe we know, in this case, we know exactly the problem, right? That, hey, this is too far, it might take a lifetime for even a human to reach there. So by the time if somebody gets there, it's already dead. So we know the problem, that how can we be that fast without even, and go there in one piece, right? So that is the problem. But the domain is not well defined. We don't know what else, technology is necessary, what kind of skill set is necessary, what extra knowledge we need to know about the universe and trajectory to go there and things like that. So domain is not very well defined. So that, for that, we need a breakthrough innovation. And typically, to get any breakthrough innovation, you need a variety of technology and variety of skill set, variety of people, variety of mindset to get through that. So that is the breakthrough innovation. Now coming here, which is disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation is where, the problem is very well defined. Okay, so sorry, the problem is not very well defined, but the domain is well defined, which means, it is kind of, it's people doesn't, if you ask somebody what are you trying to solve, they can't put their finger on it. Okay, but then the existing resources that we have, the skills, the knowledge, we can utilize that to solve that problem. We'll see one of the examples as we in the next one. Okay, basic research is where none of them is very well defined. So this is more around, still researching, like, for example, we are still researching on the use cases for blockchain and how we can utilize in some of the areas. And I would say it has definitely gone a little bit beyond basic research, but just to give you an idea. All right, so this is time for quiz. So keep your pen and paper ready. We'll have 4 or 5 questions, and try to identify in which category this particular innovation will fit into. So you have 4 of them. If you want to take a quick note, here they are. So breakthrough innovation, okay, sustaining innovation, basic research, and disruptive innovation. All right. Okay, so this is Airbnb, Uber. So these are probably, I don't have to provide any introduction for these. Now, considering what they have done, look broadly that what they have done in the market, where would you categorize them? Are they breakthrough, sustaining, basic,
Sustain.
or is
Sustain.
okay? I hear some sustaining innovation. All right, so let's see whether you're right or wrong.
Yeah, I was thinking disruptive, Sanjeev. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so disruptive, because the problem is not very well defined in that case. People couldn't imagine that I can just use my personal car to move people, use my personal home to allow people to live in. The problem was not defined. They created this problem space. Think of that blue ocean strategy, right? So they think of, hey, this is a completely new market. How can we? And it was not that they're competing against anybody, right? They disrupted a lot of existing incumbents like the tax industry, like the hoteling industry. So it is considered disruptive innovation. The domain knowledge was well defined, which means the technology, the skill set, the resources that they used to create this disruption was nothing that they created, from air. So it was something they already had at their disposal, and they just assembled it, and created this as a product. So this is a great example of disruptive innovation. Great, thank you for participating. Let's go to the next one. So I had other examples, but I took geo just so that it resonates much well with folks who are in India. So what do you categorize? For example, Walmart. I can tell you what Walmart does. Is today, if you go to the Walmart site, they allow you even the third party to sell through Walmart. So they are more like, oops, I'm hearing some background. So they allow even, pretty much like Amazon, right? Anybody can go in and resell. So they are allowing these third party, not that it's only their product that you can sell. And there are other such companies as well who are doing it. Geo, for example, is going fiber, doing all the high-end network and launching new product. So where would you categorize Walmart and Geo kind of, the kind of innovation that they do on a daily basis?
Breakthrough.
It's sustaining.
Breakthrough.
I
Sustaining.
would say, oh wow, I was thinking disruptive again.
Sustaining.
All right. So the easy way to think about sustaining innovation is the people who are already established in the market, right? They have to just sustain, and to sustain, they have to innovate as well, right? So they cannot just sit idle and think that, hey, I'll just milk my cow and I'm good, right? They have to continuously work through. So that's the reason these companies are continuously creating new innovative products and services, but those are incremental in nature. They very rarely. So one thing I would also say that if you are saying, breakthrough or disruptive or any of the other areas, probably you're not wrong. The reason I'm saying that is because most of the innovation, because even if it's, let's say, Geo or Walmart, maybe some of the innovation that they do might be breakthrough, right? Some of them, what they do could be just the research. They're still researching how to do this. So there's not a wrong or right answer here, but I'm just, we're just trying to put this in general, that the kind of work that they do falls under what category, so that, at least we have a good understanding of what these innovations are of, right? So there's no, not really right or wrong, but just so that you understand the concept, so it makes it easier for you to grasp. All right, so next one. So this is TurboTax. If I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with and how popular this is in India, but TurboTax has, is a software that you use to file your taxes in the U.S. and Canada. Is very common in North America, particularly. So they came up with is something called a SnapTax mobile app. What that means is you take your W-2 form. So W-2 form is, I don't recall exactly what the equivalent. So the one that you get in India from your employer saying these were your earnings for the year, right? So you get that form, and if you are using the product from TurboTax, you just take a picture of it, okay, and that's it. And then you're ready to file your tax. Here, of course, there are some basic assumptions that, you don't have any other deductions or any other sources of earning and whatnot, right? So it is for very, very simple tax filing. And there are a huge category of people like students and, new employees, they fall into this category. And today, if they're not using this product, they have to type in so much of information. So you can just take a picture and upload and click a few buttons and you're done, right? So TurboTax is a software based tax filing system, and they introduced this. They came up with this product. So where would you categorize this?
I would say breakthrough.
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 All right. So this was a trick question. Okay. So so we'll see the breakthrough examples so that you'll be able to understand the difference between breakthrough and sustaining. So here, although it sounds very fancy, what they did, but we will call it sustaining because as Intuit, which is the product is TurboTax, as a company, they have to sustain. They don't want to become next Blockbuster or Nortel, right? So they have to keep improving their product so that people keep using their product more and more. So it is a strategy to sustain, to sustain as an organization. So broadly speaking, it is a sustaining innovation. All right, so let's look at this. So for this, I have to just tell a quick story. So, there was a company, it was a technology company that specializes in creating microchips. Okay, the computer chips kind of, and they were given they received a project for $1 million to create a microchip that can detect the level of pollutants, how polluted the water is, under in a at certain depth. And then everybody was so they had their very first meeting, and they happened to have a marine biologist as part of the team. So they were in their very first meeting, and within first 45 minutes, the marine biologist went out, grabbed a bag of clam. You see in the picture here, the clam is kind of, who loves seafood, this clam is also a seafood. So he grabbed that and put it in the meeting table and say, hey, problem is solved, because these clams are so sensitive to pollutants that when they detect this level of pollution, they open up. And so we don't have to create a chip to understand the pollution level, but rather we just need a mechanism to see when this clam opens up their mouth, which is much, much simpler than figuring out how this chip can detect pollution level. So considering this, what kind of innovation you think this is? Look at the quadrant, okay? So domain well-defined, problem well-defined.
Breakthrough.
I'm glad you're all... All right, so this is a breakthrough, okay? Because here everybody knew what the problem is, right? So they wanted to create something so that they can detect the level of pollution in water. But then, the technology or the skill set necessary to do that was not very clear. They were trying, they were struggling to do it by creating a microchip. But when they brought in other domains like the marine biologist, that's how this guy has nothing. This guy knows nothing about microchip, right? And the microchip guy probably doesn't know much about, what the characteristics of a clam is, right? But then when you bring them together, two minds of two different domains, then they came up with a solution. And guess what? They were able to solve this with just $1,000, and that's what they said, and they saved like $999,000 in that project. So there's a huge win for them. So and this one I believe is much easier. So IBM quantum computing, what do you categorize this?
Disruptive.
Disruptive.
Okay, so this is kind of a basic research because right now we still don't know, quite a lot around because you can see IBM is still researching on it. We don't even know what is the problem it's going to solve, right? We know notionally there are some problems it is going to solve, but then it's not like crystal clear, right? Maybe after a few years, it may not stay as a basic research anymore. It will get into either, it can be used as a disruptive or as a breakthrough. So you're not wrong, okay? But given where it is today, just to understand the categorization, it is considered still a basic research. Pretty much like, some of the applications of blockchain. Some of them could be disruptive, but in some areas, still some research is happening. All right, so we got a sense of, what innovation is, how to categorize, what's, just kind of a definition and structure around that. But how do you develop this mindset, right? So let's see what we do today. Our standard operating model today is think yourself as sitting in the middle, right, as a bridge, that golden, link, if you recall. So if you're sitting in the middle, very likely we are working as information broker. Right? We are just taking information from the business, passing on to the technology guys, from technology, translate back to business. We are probably focusing on documenting what and how. From the technology side, we might be answering what and how based on what we gather from business. Also, we are focusing on things such as requirement traceability. We are testing things which are expected, and we're trying to play safe. We just know that this is our scope, and I have to live in that box, and that is our standard operating model. Nothing wrong about that. That's how we operate, right? But then if we have to go to the next level, if individually, if we have to, show that you are much more valuable than what you are today, then we have to do something more than what we do today. So from that perspective, so there are a few elements of it. So what are those? So one is, focus on why. For example, instead of asking business, let's say you are, I'm just taking as an example, let's say you're on the QA lead and you are talking to business and just extracting information about what, and how, rather, you ask why we're doing this, right? So what will happen is it triggers a question in business people that, yeah, what, why am I doing this feature or this requirement? I have something else that can solve for this. Or so you're helping them think in a little bit different way, because you are that golden link. So you have to utilize that powerful position and help the business come up with much more creative solution. So when we talk about innovation, it's not an individual effort in many cases. So it's not that we have to think, hey, I have to just innovate. You have to create a culture of innovation, right? So once we talk to a business guy and say, hey, why we're doing this? Hey, I haven't seen other companies do like this. I haven't seen that much more effective. Or do you think this will be a much better solution? So when you do that, you are opening that up, and your value within the organization or just anywhere will just bump up, because they think that, hey, you are not just an order taker, you are somebody who adds value to what you do. So that is what means by asking around why. And also probably you might be aware of the design thinking approach. So wherein, again, not just getting yourself constrained with what is given to you, rather thinking a little broader end to end from customer's perspective, and then trying to debate and trying to figure out, not become a notorious debater, but giving a little bit extra thought to what's why it is being done, and probably propose few solutions. Two levels up and down, what it means is, many times when we are placed in an organization structure, we constrain our thinking to that level. We think, hey, that I don't have to think about that. That is beyond my pay grade. That is, I'm not paid to think about that. I'm not a leader and things like that. So just forget that. At least try to go 2 level up and also 2 level down. Many of us might be in a much higher position, and then we think, hey, I just give my order and the other guys should do it, right? So again, we have to get out of that thinking, because then that kind of stifles innovation, because then people are just either order takers or order givers. We don't collaborate to come up with solutions. Uh, Powerful questions, I think you might be aware of. There is kind of a set of powerful questions that you can even Google it, and keep it handy, because it helps you ask more open-ended questions to get the right response, and or to help people think through different ways to solve the problem. On the right hand side, you see two of them, which one is new market solution and to prevent low end disruption. So new market solution is more of a blue ocean strategy. So again, when you're thinking of something, either as a business analyst or as even as a QA or in any other role that you are in, think of, what is something new that can be done here, which nobody has thought yet. So you can, all these strategies that I'm talking about, it need not be all at the very, very CEO level or organization level. As we all know, leadership can be exercised at just about any level. So from that perspective, think of, what is something new that, is at least within your circle of influence, or at least you can have a good discussion around that. Preventing low-end disruption. This is again kind of a concept going back to Clayton Christensen. I was talking about the jobs to be done in that example. So this low-end disruption is around other organizations trying to come in from the lower end of your spectrum and trying to eat up a piece of your pie, so to speak, right? For take an example in the banking industry, there would be fintechs who are just trying to just take a small slice of your bigger pie, and you don't care because that piece of pie is not very significant for you, but then it is significant for the fintech, and then eventually they start eating up more and more. So how you can think about you as a golden link. You understand technology, you understand business, how you can connect the dots and think about that, and bring it forward. All right, so this is more of a mind map of what we just talked about so far. So innovation are of 4 types: breakthrough innovation, research, sustaining, and disruptive innovation. So sustaining innovation is very much incremental in nature. Design thinking comes in there as well, wherein you're thinking from a customer point of view and just trying to, come up with a better version of your product. Road mapping is done as part of that exercise. Disruptive innovation focuses on jobs to be done. Low-end disruption is also kind of disruptive innovation, the fintechs coming in and disrupting the industry. New market disruption, we saw the example of Uber, Ola, these are new market, the blue ocean strategy. On the left-hand side, you see the breakthrough innovation. These are open innovation, wherein, ideas from different areas, they collide together, and you come up with different skill sets to come up with a solution. So diversity is important there, and something called adjacent domain. What it means is many times the problem cannot be found in the same domain where the problem was solved. Sorry, the solution could not be found in the same domain as the problem was created. So you look for adjacent domains. Example of that marine biologist and the microchip, right? So there is an ocean there. So marine biologist is the adjacent domain that comes into picture, and not just the technology guy. Research is all around, piloting things, doing A/B kind of testing, lab kind of work. So that is around research. I think this is my last slide around how do we cultivate that mindset within ourselves. And this is not an exhaustive list by any chance. That's why there is a big question mark towards the end. And I would like to hear from you as well, if you have something, that you believe is helping you in, getting new ideas and sparking new ideas. I'm just sharing my five here, which helps me in coming up with, staying innovative. So number one is listening to podcasts. So I commute now, not so much in last couple of months, but I listen to quite a lot of podcasts. And what important is variety. Okay, so you listen about podcasts on psychology, economics, and business. So it need not be just one, because you see the breakthrough innovation comes when you apply knowledge from one domain and see how it can solve a problem in another domain. Right? So that's how. Uh, so you need to have much more variety in the things that you consume. Next is, this probably is much more common to do non-fictional reading, because, to understand the structure, because this reading helps you in constructing some kind of a framework around how do I do this thing. When you think about something, it's not going random then. You're putting it in a nice structure. That's the reason we saw those 4 types of innovation, just so that whenever we think of innovation now, we think, hey, where do they fall? And it helps you, think in a little bit much more structured and satisfying way than if you just have to think randomly, because then you don't even know how to put those things on paper. Third is the critical observation. So this is around, whatever is around us, just be mindful of things. Let's say even if you are in a bus traveling, just don't stay engaged with the phone. Just observe things around you. What other people are doing. How the street. What's happening on the streets. So just keep the mind open and try to absorb as much as you can without being judgmental. Right? Not try to say, hey, just because people are throwing things there, hey, throwing things, that's fine, but how can I solve that problem? Or who can solve that problem? How that problem can be solved by different means. So when we observe and be mindful of things around us, it can be event, it can even be people, it can be just about anything, and that will help you in connecting all these dots and looking for a solution. Fourth one is no distraction, mundane things. So I bet most of you, when you are in the shower, for me, my favorite is, of course, shower is everyone's favorite when you are there. Just because you can't carry your phone, you can't, you're just relaxed. Nobody is going to come and disturb you. Nobody is going to knock your bathroom door. It is that state of mind, where lots of great ideas and thoughts come in, right? So don't discount those. Right? Use those to your advantage. For example, for mails on the phone, saving. This is a no-brainer, but at the same time, you can do two things while you're saving, and that is also an opportunity where things comes to mind. Maybe with females, I'm not sure. Maybe when you're doing a nail polish or something, because you are already adept at doing it, so your mind is free, but at the same time, you're engaged and you're not distracted. So think of some of those that you already do, and then keep doing it. Sometimes we just automate and find something else to do it in a much more automated fashion, and we don't create that white space in our life. And it is important to have those white space to get new ideas. Last but not the least is to connect with diverse people. As we all know, we are as good as 5 people around us. So more diversity you have in terms of age, in terms of thought process, in terms of your social needs and whatnot, the more ideas you will get. So with that, I will close. I think we are very much on time, so I'm not sure whether we want to stretch a little bit, and I'll be happy to take any questions. And by the way, as part of, as I said, I'm also co-founder and mentor for entrepreneurs. So if you are thinking of a business, either consulting or whatever it is, and you want to develop that idea, I will be offering, a free service to you on my public incubator platform. So ping me on LinkedIn. So with that, I will close here. Back to you, Aditya.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sanjeev. Yeah, guys, so if you have any questions, can you raise your hands and we can actually call you out for asking questions, if any, because that way we can control who can be on mute and who cannot be. So that way it can be done systematically. So yeah, Srinath, go ahead.
Sanjiv, it's really good. You have covered most of the thing. Is there any methodology to be an innovator?
It's a very broad question, you know. It's like, how can I be a human kind of question. so, so if you go back to some of the practices that I talked about, right? If you consciously practice those, you know, you will become a great innovator. You know, just be more open. You know, more open to sharing ideas. As we all know, you know, there is a saying that, you know, what is it called? I even forget. I only remember the last part of it, which is great mind discusses ideas, right? And mediocre mind discusses events or something of that nature. So you know, surround yourself with that kind of people as well, so that and you know, consume that kind of information which will help trigger that. Now, there's no magic bullet for that, that hey, take this pill and you will become innovator next day. It is a practice, right? So that's the reason I was just sharing some of those foundational habits that we develop, which will help us becoming more productive and innovative.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjeev. So can I take the screen back, Sanjeev, while
Sure.
we are asking? Yeah, thanks you so much.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll share the screen. Yeah. So guys, while I'm sharing my screen, I would request you guys to go ahead and make sure that if you want to ask any questions, you just raise your hand and I can actually give that question opportunity to you guys.
Yeah, Aditya, there is a question in the chat. So there is
Yeah, go ahead and ask.
question.
Yeah, Harsh, can you ask that
Sure. So someone named Rishan is asking how startups should approach innovation in product development.
Okay. So there are, you know, different tools available to think about, you know, when you're thinking of the product, right? Where now, since we know that these are the four categories, and the easiest way for a startup to get into the market is through low-end disruption. You know, it is a proven method. Low-end disruption is, you can read about that, maybe Google it and you know, read about that. This is all about, you know, trying to serve that customer base where the big incumbents, you know, big organizations, they are not very interested in. You know, because big organizations have, you know, they are more interested in improving the product to such a degree that, you know, they're sophisticated customers, so they usually focus on sophisticated customers because they're creating sophisticated products. Take for example, you know, even iPhone, right? I can bet my parents don't, if I hand over an iPhone to them, they will struggle to use it, right? Because they are, in this example, they would be considered as a low end spectrum of the customer base that Apple has. So if you are a startup and you try to tackle that, you know, that is a much easier entry into the market than trying to, you know, get to a professional who uses the iPhone for 1,000 different things, because then you have to outpace Apple to get to that level, and it's very hard, right? So that is one way for that. And again, if you already have a product, then there are different other strategies that you can think about. You remember sustaining innovation. So, you know, what are those features, you know, that again connect the jobs to be done as well, right? That what is the job your customer is trying to do through your product or service, and how you can, you know, improve your product so that, you know, it focuses on the jobs to be done. Because what I have experienced is many times when you design or create a product, you know, people use it for completely different reason. You know, you won't even know that they use it for something that you didn't even intend it for. So once you figure that out, then why not focus on something that people intend to use it for, rather than, you know, what you thought that this is going to be useful for. So there are different tools and different ways. Also on this incubator platform, we have over 24 tools that helps people to think through all these and develop their ideas from scratch. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Sanjeev, for answering that. Any further question? We'll take the last one before we end this webinar. If you can raise your hand. Yeah, Karthik, go ahead, please.
Hi Sanjeev, like Karthik here.
Hey,
So I just
Karthik.
wanted, yeah, like we discussed few things about the products, like startup, like how they are more innovative, how we can achieve something. What about service? Like let's say, like we wanted to start something on service sector, like we are
Mhm.
helping somebody to achieve something. How do we
Right.
approach it? Like what will be the approach for that? Thanks.
Okay. So Karthik, there's, fundamentally there's no difference between product or service. The approach that you're going to take is the same. Product is again a very, I would say, a notional definition, right? The product many times is a combination, because when we think of product, many times we think of something very physical, a tangible, right? Now think of you might have even heard, if somebody from as an insurance agent approaches you and say, hey, this is an insurance product, right? This is not a tangible thing. That is a service, actually, if you look at it. So effectively, there's no difference as such. Either you call it a product or you call it a service. The mechanics, the mechanism that you put into that to improve, either you call it product or service, to the next level, it stays the same. It's the same fundamental thing, because there is a set of customers who are willing to buy your product or service for some reason, right? And what is that reason, and what is that value that you're going to provide versus the cost, or the perceived cost and the perceived value, and what is the gap between that, and that is very significant, right? So if I'm just having a service of delivering milk, for example, and I say, you know what, I'm going to charge you 100 rupees for a month, and I'll deliver you milk, and then I'll, as a consumer, it's just a service, simple service, but I'll just compare, is 100 rupees worth, or can I just walk in, I'll have a little bit of exercise as well while I'm grabbing my milk. So maybe that 100 rupees is not significant for me, but it is more important that I get to walk and do the exercise. But then if you are on the other side, having that service of delivering milk, then you have to think, how can you have that, exercise part to be done as well as delivering the milk, right? So you can come with that kind of product. Hey, I can deliver the milk in the park, right? So you come in the park, have a walk, and I give you the milk towards the end. So you don't have to carry your milk. So you do extra exercise and also get your milk. So that's the way to kind of think, when you're thinking from the customer point of view, that what is the job this customer is trying to do, and it's not necessarily that specific product or service. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah. Thank you, Sanjeev. Thanks a lot. Guys, in the interest of time, I would request that you can connect with Sanjeev over LinkedIn. Sanjeev, accept request, and
Sure.
obviously you have given basically 10 people to help them out in the public incubator. I would like to basically now take the opportunity to thank you. Can you see my screen, guys? Sanjeev, can you see?
Yeah, it's blank though. Maybe it's dark.
One second, let me do it again.
Yeah, it's coming now.
Is it?
Yes,
It
Adi, we
went.
can see the presentation.
Okay, I just did it again. I just thought, is it now visible? Guys, my sincere thanks to Sanjeev for doing this wonderful pre-conference webinar for us. And the best part was not about only about the innovation and the mindset that he talked about, but I was very intrigued, and I would like to thank him for sharing his foundational habits about the podcast and non-functional reading, critical observations, and how we can actually interact with our 5 people surrounding us. And obviously, I get, similarly to Sanjeev, a lot of ideas in the bathroom, not necessarily while taking shower. Okay, so I don't want to say, but you got the idea. So, but thank
Yeah.
you so much, Sanjeev. This was very wonderful, and you made it interactive by doing a lot of quiz and all. At the same time, I would like to thank our sponsors, our platinum sponsors, Quality Kiosk, gold sponsors, Pre Cloudy, and all our sponsors, including IOTA, Value Innova, Bruising, Valuable Consulting, and Opal Creative Minds. With that, I expect that you could basically test your interface as well, and we would be looking forward for your participation in DOPA. Sanjeev, do join DOPA if you can as our guest, if that is okay to request you.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to have maybe a couple of sessions for sure.
Sure, sure. We
Keynotes.
will send you the URL and you can join as a guest. Well, thank you so
Okay.
much, Sanjeev, once again. From the entire team, we would like to thank you again. It's a real pleasure to hear you, and it is a real pleasure to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I hope, at least there are a couple of nuggets that you can take back and start applying from tomorrow.
Yes,
Yep.
All right.
I'm sure. All right. Cheers. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thanks,
take care.
everyone.
Bye.
Have a,
Thanks.
have a
Bye.
good one. Bye now.